How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your February 2019 horoscope for Sagittarius, Sun, and Rising. How's it going, guys? This month is definitely going to be a little bit different for you than the past couple of months have been. This isn't really going to be the biggest month in the world, however. It is going to be a little bit weird, so I might as well just go into it to explain it all. Go into the horoscope. First thing that's going on is February 3rd, we have Venus going into Capricorn. So Venus is leaving your first house. I know, I'm sad about it too. Venus, that planet of value, she was in your first house. You're feeling yourself a little bit more. However, as Venus goes into your second house of Capricorn, this is where the theme is really going to start to really make a change, is a good way to put it. Venus is that planet of value, of love, of synthesizing, bringing things together. And she's in the sign of Capricorn, where Venus wants to bring rules and discipline and structure to things, and she finds the value in that area. And she's going into your second house of money, finances, resources, and physical possessions. Now, this is really important because as Saturn's going through your second house of money and resources and whatnot, where Saturn can make you, kind of basically make you feel like you've got to get that more handled, you've got to be more disciplined, have more restrictions, and concentrate that energy more. Venus is also going to be going through your second house where money could be looking a little bit better. The themes of how you're handling your money is going to be a lot nicer. You're going to be valuing disciplining yourself in the financial area as well as rules and all of that whatnot. And we'll be talking more of Venus and Capricorn as we go on. However, the next big thing is the next day on February 4th, we have the new moon in Aquarius. So this is happening in your third house, which is an interesting place to have a new moon, an interesting place for anything really. The third house has to do with communication, intellect, like writing, speak, all that. It's very mercurial. Has to do with your siblings, has to do with your neighbors, has to do with short distance travel. As we have this new moon in this area, this new moon is about resetting intentions, clearing out energy. We have both of the luminaries pointing the light on and the focus and the attention on one sign, on one house. And Aquarius is all about disconnecting. Aquarius is about detachment. Aquarius is about alienation and isolation. And this new moon is about taking all of that energy of what it's like to be detached and alien and isolated from. This could be your siblings, this could be from your neighbors, this could be with your sense of communication. This is about stepping outside the box and seeing a different perspective in order to construct or connect a bigger idea. So when it comes to themes of your communication, this is about going like, hey, where can I really detach away from an old perspective and how can I really do things in a new and a creative way? Something that's going to be more disciplined, something that's going to have more spirit of essence of how things should work, how things can be connected, and how things can grow into something new. So it's not the biggest thing in the world, but this new moon is really going to help you focus on your communication and how you address things. Now, we have about a week past, like basically nothing really happens for a week until about February 10th. We have Mercury going into Pisces, where Mercury gets out of your third house where it's been easy for you to communicate and express these things. Mercury goes into your fourth house of your family and your home life and your parents, and you know this also has to do with your actual living situation. Mercury is also going into detriment in this area, and we'll be talking a lot about Mercury and Pisces for them, not only in this video but for next month as well. As Mercury goes into Pisces, he's going into his detriment, where he doesn't work as well as he could. Mercury likes to have communication in either written form or in verbal form that's very thought out and that's very, attentive. Mercury in Pisces has to kind of come up with what he has to say and what he needs to say at the spot, at the moment, and kind of going off he feels. And he doesn't really work all that well that way. So with Mercury being in Pisces in your fourth house, you can be dealing with miscommunications within your family, within your parents, with dealing with even if you have a roommate situation. Mercury in this area is just bringing a little bit of a weird communication sense in that area of your home and your family and your private life. But we'll be talking a lot more about that as time goes on. A couple of days later, as we go into February 13th, we're going to have Mars conjoin Uranus in Aries, and this is a big deal for you. So Uranus has been in your fifth house in areas of love and romance and sex and children and art and creativity and habits and stuff like that. Well, not habits, but fun stuff, I should say. Mars has been in this area too, where it's been bringing you a little bit more issues. You've been wanting to focus more on this area. You've had more energy for this, but it's been causing some, issues. It's been squaring Saturn, so it's hard to have the finances for it. Mars on top of Uranus is kind of like that moment of liberation. Mars can bring problems and wants to cut and sever. So Mars is kind of very volatile at this moment. And Uranus is this planet of extreme ups and downs. So with Mars being on top of Uranus, expect the unexpected in the area of your children, in the area of love and romance and sex and things like that. This is definitely going to be bringing some issues to an extreme high or an extreme low, and you're definitely going to be finding that one day of Mars on Uranus very excitable in this area. However, the next day, on February 14th, on Valentine's Day, we have Mars going into Taurus, which this is definitely bringing a whole new theme where Mars is going into detriment for one. Mars doesn't work as well in Taurus. Mars doesn't move. He's not really movable in Taurus. This is a fixed sign where, you know, Taurus being the bull, it's sitting still, it ain't going nowhere, and you ain't doing nothing about it. Mars in Taurus is definitely bringing issues, themes around, you know, laziness, things about not being motivated. And this is happening in your 6th house of your work, of your routine, of what you're doing every single day. And so this is also your health as well. So as Mars goes through this area, you may have more issues with your health, may have a little bit more issues with this area. But the big thing is that Mars in Taurus is about taking action on the things that value the most to you, not just exerting your energy freely, knowing that it's limited, knowing where it's going to support you when it comes to putting your energy into things. So as Mars goes into Taurus and goes into your 6th house, this is about really focusing your energy, since it's limited right now, on the things that matter most regarding your habits, regarding your health, regarding your routine and your sense of service to this world. It's going to be easy for you to be lazy and not have all of the motivation in the world, but this is just the time to focus on the things that really matter so you can put the action in there, and then you can be lazy for the rest of the day. The next thing that we got going on is a couple days later, we have Venus sextiling Neptune. So as Venus is in your 2nd house of money and resources, where that's looking a little bit better, this is sextiling Neptune in your 4th house. So maybe this is like money for some home improvement. Maybe you've been wanting to do something with your house or your living situation or for your parents, and maybe you have the money for it. Maybe you have the resources for it. It's kind of like that sort of theme with money in your home life and your family life. It's a sextile, so it's not the biggest thing in the world, but you will be seeing support in both of those areas. Now, the big thing, though, is the next day, like the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, we kind of get hit with a bunch of stuff. But on the next day, on the 17th, we have Venus conjoining Saturn, where Saturn's in your 2nd house in Capricorn, where it's like, man, money can be, restricted right now. It can be constraining. You got to really take care of your finances and what's going on in that area. Venus going on top of Saturn in this area is kind of like, hey, what needs to be done, what needs to be realized, where can you put more value in this? Now, Saturn, even though it can be bringing limitations, can be bringing problems, things are just starting to become smaller and more concentrated. Venus on top of Saturn is like, okay, where do I really need to utilize this money? Where do I need to utilize the resources that I have? It's really about utilizing what you have to help work for you. Venus is, again, valuing rules and discipline and regulation and things like that. So this is going to be a good time to look at your bank account and go, what needs to change, and make those effective changes and being like, where am I spending my money? Where am I not spending my money? And how am I getting control over my finances? Then the next day, February 18th, this is kind of like a lot of stuff happens this day. Mercury conjoins Neptune. Now, Mercury, again, is in Pisces, where the message is a little bit foggy and unclear to begin with. As Mercury conjoins Neptune, this is speaking the message of Neptune, and Neptune's that very dualistic planet of very black and white of how things have to be. However, Neptune's also this foggy spiritual planet that's connecting you to a little bit something higher, that's definitely more malleable. It's something that changes. And as Mercury goes on top of Neptune, this is when you're going to see the theme around parents, family, your living situation, where that's going to be kind of come blurry, and you're going to have to start to really look at things in a dualistic nature in that sense. And as Mercury goes over this area, it's going into shadow. So Mercury in a couple weeks is later going to station retrograde in Pisces and then come back to this degree and station direct. So whatever you experience during this time as Mercury goes into shadow, you're going to be coming back to it. You're going to see it again. So miscommunication around your family, your home life, your parents, that's going to be prevalent. And it's also going to be squaring Jupiter later, which we'll talk about, which Jupiter is in your 1st house. It's like this is very personal to you. But on the 18th as well, the sun goes into Pisces. So as the sun goes into Pisces, the theme of the 4th house, around family, around where you're living, that just becomes prevalent. That's just where the light is. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but that's just where the energy is at. Also on the 18th, Chiron solidifies and locks himself into Aries. He's finally out of your 4th house of your family and your home life and your parents, where Chiron finally did the healing he needed to do there. And Chiron goes into your 5th house of love and romance and children and sex and all that stuff, where the healing really begins there. And I did a whole video about Chiron and Aries. Make sure you guys go check that out. That will definitely connect more of the dots about what Chiron and Aries is going to be about. But the next day, February 19th, we have the full moon in Virgo. This is going to be a pretty big deal, is because as the sun goes into Pisces and it's in your 4th house and you're dealing with things about how you know, where you center yourself, where your foundation is, the full moon in Virgo is bringing up themes of your career. Now, as the sun, we have Mercury in your 4th house. It's like, where are you centering yourself? Where are you living? What's that situation going like? This full moon in Virgo is bringing the light and the emphasis to your career, to what's going on in the public eye, what's going on in your career and in your job. And the full moon in Virgo is helping you realize kind of like, hey, what needs to be adjusted and corrected in this area in order to really get some more stability going on in your living situation. On the 19th as well, with the full moon, Mercury is going to be sextiling Saturn, where Mercury is in, you know, the 4th house. It's in Pisces. It's still lost. It's still confused. It isn't really explaining things the way it needs to be explained. Saturn and Capricorn in your 2nd house is like, hey, what do you have? Like, what do you, it's, I guess the best way to put it is Mercury in your 4th house, themes of the family, home life. Maybe you want to do some type of project, maybe focus on in this area. There's some changes in this area. How is Saturn in your 2nd house? Like, how is your money doing with this? Is this helping out your financial situation? Is basically like what's kind of changing in this area, is that helping out your financial situation? Is that helping you have more resources and having more things for yourself rather than being so lacked of, like not having that? So that's definitely going to be a thing. There's going to be a couple other sextiles too, which again, sextiles aren't the most like insane aspect. They're just very insignificant, like supporting aspects. So it's not like it's the biggest thing in the world, but Saturn sextile Mercury is pretty positive. Now, as we go into the 22nd though, a couple days later, we have Venus conjoining Pluto. So Pluto's been in your 2nd house for a while. Like themes about money and finance has been a very drastic thing. And as Venus goes on top of Pluto, this is kind of planting the seeds where there was destruction. It's kind of like there was a big wildfire that really burned down a lot of shit in this area. But now that that soil is fertile for growth, this is the time to plant the seeds of what changes and what chaos have you seen before, and how can you prepare for that now? And how can you enjoy that? Like Venus is in your 2nd house of money. Like this is a time for you to focus on this area of your finances and your resources. But as Venus conjoins Pluto, it's kind of like looking at things and going, this is really bad and this has been bad before. I got to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I've got to make sure I discipline myself and play by the rules to make sure I can cross all my T's and dot all my I's and I don't have to deal with this again. On the same day, on February 22nd, we have Mercury squaring Jupiter, where as Mercury's in your 4th house and, you know, the miscommunications is just starting to arise, it's squaring Jupiter, where Jupiter's in your 1st house. You're feeling more of yourself. You're understanding more of yourself. You're being more confident. You're having more belief in that. And as Mercury squares Jupiter, this may be that miscommunication of like, hey, maybe maybe, I don't want to say, it may look unsupportive at first, and that may not be the whole story. It's just definitely going to put a little Debbie Downer on the Jupiter and 1st house stuff for you, where you're wanting to expand more of yourself and be more positive. That square from Mercury may be like, maybe not everyone's on the same page as you. And that's okay, because Mercury's going to retrograde. We're going to be going over this a couple of times, so don't just think that that's the final answer right then and there. Then the last two things is on the 25th, Venus is going to conjoin the South Node. And the South Node in Capricorn's like, you need to get this money situation together. Like, what do you need to change? What do you need to let go from? And how do you need to get that situation handled so you can kind of grow out of it? As Venus is on top of the South Node, this is really looking at, I'm ready to move on from the past. I'm ready to do things differently because I value this this structure and this order of things versus the past way I've done things. Now, this is also an opportunity to really look at the past and go, how have I done things in this area that have worked before, and how have I done things in this area that haven't worked before? The big thing is, as Venus conjoins the South Node, is really looking at the past and going, what are you ready for something different? Are you ready for something new? And realizing, like, kind of doing the numbers of, the old way doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. So that's going to be a pretty big thing. And then the last thing that we got going on February 27th is Mercury sextiling Venus. So this is definitely going to be more supportive of that money stuff, as Venus is in your 2nd house, Mercury's in your 4th house, where there's going to be a little bit support with the money situation in your family and your home life. Not the biggest support in the world, but it's going to be there as a little cushion. So that's basically February. It's kind of like a weird month for you. I'd also like to focus on Mars being in Taurus. Mars in Taurus definitely going to be focused on, you know, what is your health, what are your habits, what are you doing every single day. But other than that, that's what February is looking like for you guys. It's definitely going to be an interesting month. It's kind of weird. It kind of focuses more on finances and more on family, home stuff, and we're going to be talking a lot more about that next month in March as well. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and liking and commenting and sharing and subscribing, and I'll be seeing you guys next month.